He saw me in there and he was like, "Hello, Marjorie." He's always so sweet and recognizes me. And he said, "Are you being nice?" He was joking. "Are you being nice to Speaker Johnson?" And I said, "Eh."
He said very complimentary things about all of us. We had sustained applause. He said, "I'm doing a very good job." I mean, we're grateful for that. Look.
House Republicans showed up late to work today because they chose instead to personally greet their cult leader, convicted felon Donald Trump, when he showed up to Washington, D.C. And what many of them, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, had to say after was really gross and weird. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I have several clips to show you in this video, and they're all kind of weird and gross and really despicable when you think about it. These are adults imbued with enormous power on behalf of we the people, and they should be using that power responsibly for their constituents and for the American people writ large. And instead, they're showing up late to work. So the House Judiciary Democratic X or Twitter account, whatever you want to call it, they tweeted this out earlier today. Here we are, ready to work, plus Chip Roy, the one lone Republican congressman who showed up there on time. Where is the rest of @Judiciary GOP? Right? Well, where they were was meeting with their cult leader, convicted felon Donald Trump, when he showed up to Washington, D.C. They all showed up en masse to kneel and prostrate themselves before dear leader. And I want to play you some clips of what some prominent Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, the most powerful elected Republican in Congress, how they would characterize their meeting with the cult leader.
I really found his speech to be one of my favorite speeches. He came in, talked to the conference, was very honest. He was funny. He was joking around constantly with everyone. He was really sweet to me. He said to Speaker Johnson, he goes, "Okay, you got one more seat. You need to be tougher." He saw me. I was sitting back a little ways. He saw me in there and he was like, "Hello, Marjorie." He's always so sweet and recognizes me. And he said, "Are you being nice?" He was joking. "Are you being nice to Speaker Johnson?" And I said, "Eh." And he said, "Okay, be nice to him." And I nodded my head. And then
former president gave his endorsement to this leadership team, and does he want you to continue to be the speaker after the November election?
He said very complimentary things about all of us. We had sustained applause. He said, "I'm doing a very good job." I mean, we're grateful for that. Look, we have to have continuity in leadership. We have to have a plan, and it has to be very carefully executed.
So yeah, that's really gross stuff from grown adults who wield enormous power. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mike Johnson should find some way to extract some sort of dignity from the situation. And instead, they're like twirling their hair and giggling and glancing at the ground and offering coquettish smiles as if they're, describing an interaction they had at the locker with their high school crush. Instead, it was Donald Trump, right? I mean, this is really, really weird stuff from a party that protests when you call them a cult, right? No, we're not a cult. We don't worship Donald Trump. And then you behave like this. People on Twitter appropriately savage them. I've heard women talk about their husbands like this before they serve divorce papers. She's trying real hard to sell that she loves that man. She's so scared of him. I'd be so incredibly embarrassed if I were her. This is so embarrassing, says Midas Touch. I mean, it just goes on in thrall. If you keep scrolling, I mean, insurrectionists of a feather come together at CNN. Mike Johnson also was pretty savage as well. It wasn't just Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, we saw what happens the last time Mike had a, quote, plan that had to be, quote, carefully executed. When Daddy says you did a good job on your school project, Speaker of the House proud to receive M&Ms for pooping on potty. Again, the disdain that people have for this iteration of the Republican Party is so appropriate. They deserve it. These elected Republicans deserve every ounce of scorn and contempt you can possibly give them. This is so beyond the pale. We've never seen anything like this in the political history of the United States. And there have been some pretty low moments in our political history in terms of how parties behave. But in terms of the cultish devotion to a particular figure, we haven't seen this. I mean, my God, even President Washington, who was the only president elected unanimously by the Electoral College twice. I mean, even he received pushback from his cabinet and from elements of the Washingtonian era Congress. I mean, we just don't see this. This is so unique. And again, it's not just them. I want to remind you, we did a video recently about how former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, a lifelong conservative Republican, a man who was the darling of the GOP at one point, he was seen as the future of the GOP. Now he's no longer Speaker and he's no longer in Congress because he said, screw this and peaced out, right? He saw the writing on the wall that this was becoming a populist, unprincipled authoritarian cult. Well, He spoke out against Donald Trump on the Fox Propaganda Network. And in response, a Republican Congressman, Troy Nehls, who says some pretty weird cultish things about Donald Trump, to be fair, this is what he had to say in response to Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan, you're a piece of garbage. You're a piece of garbage, and we should kick you out of the party. For Paul Ryan to say he's not voting for Donald Trump, that's the problem with some of our Republicans. It's guys like that. Don't go spouting your mouth off and saying you're a conservative. You're spitting in the face of the leader of our party, Donald Trump. I mean, grow up a little bit.
Yeah, Paul Ryan, you should grow up. You should grow up. The grown-up thing to do is to cultishly prostrate yourself before a convicted felon, an adjudicated fraudster, an adjudicated rapist, when you're in the party of, again, the so-called moral majority, the party of Christ, the party of law and order. This is a total contradiction. But this is what Paul Ryan said in his interview with the Fox Propaganda Network, that, listen, the real rhinos, right, Republicans in name only, because that epithet, existed prior to Trump, but it was used to describe so-called liberal Republicans, right? People who didn't hold conservative values or conservative policy prescriptions. And now that epithet is being used by other Republicans as a litmus test for loyalty to Donald Trump. You are a rhino, not if you hold liberal policy positions or progressive policy positions. You can be as conservative as it gets. But if you're not personally devoutly loyal to Donald Trump, if you don't put person above party above country, right? It should be the opposite, right? You should put country above party, above person. But the current GOP puts person above party, above country. If you don't do that, that's what makes you a rhino, according to Troy Nehls. Really weird and gross stuff. And here's the thing. Yeah, I don't know to the extent that I don't know how many of them are true believers. I don't know if Mike Johnson's a true believer. Marjorie Taylor Greene strikes me as a true believer. I don't know about Troy Nehls. I imagine it's a mix, right? There's some people who have truly drank the Kool-Aid, right? And so they're high on their own supply. Others, I think, just imitate the behavior of a cult in order for to benefit from political expediency. But it's important to remember that it's not just elected Republicans. There are millions of Americans, everyday Americans, who have embraced the cult in this way, and it's a feedback loop every which way.
He's not going to get angry. He's got too much to fix. He's not a vengeful person.
I mean, you think about Jesus Christ himself. Everybody went against him because he was preaching love and doing what was right for the people. And Trump's doing what's right for this nation. And because he's doing that, everybody is against him.
Those are everyday Americans talking about Donald Trump. They've never met Donald Trump. They don't know Donald Trump personally. They have no conception of him. They see him from afar. And when people are like, well, listen, he's a petty, vengeful, malignant narcissist. They're like, no. He'll be much too busy to try to extract revenge on his political opponents. And he's very much like Jesus. And again, we talked about in a previous video how Marjorie Taylor Greene also compared him to Jesus Christ. But that was after, and this was less than 2 weeks ago, she threw public temper tantrums at the notion that she worshiped Donald Trump. She was so outraged. So again, consider the clip I just showed you of Marjorie Taylor Greene at the beginning of this video and contrast it with what she said less than 2 weeks ago.
We have Jamie Raskin in there accusing us of worshiping Trump, worshiping as a convicted felon. He is a convicted felon. Well, yeah, so is George Floyd. And everybody, and you all too, the media worship George Floyd. Democrats worship George Floyd. There were riots burning down the country over George Floyd, and Raskin is in there saying we worship him. Excuse me, let me correct you, and this is really important. I don't worship, I worship God. God. And Jesus is my savior. I don't worship President Trump.
Your actions beg to differ. Your words beg to differ. If you are trying to assure people that you are not a cultist that worships Donald Trump, you are doing the worst job imaginable by acting like a cultist that worships Donald Trump in every other instance of your public life. So that's on you, right? At the end of the day, it is perfectly fair, it's perfectly reasonable to refer to MAGA as a cult, and they should be treated like a cult. Yes, with pity. Yes, with, an olive branch, if you want to extend that to MAGA to bring them out to help to de-radicalize them. But also the cult itself is something that deserves contempt. It is an authoritarian cult of personality. That's exactly what it is. They have no noble aspirations. It's a cult that is laced with greed, with xenophobia, with racism, with misogyny, right? With an intolerance towards facts and history and science, a profound selfishness, a refusal to share power with others. They're the ones who think that they own this country. MAGA, in their minds, they own the United States. We liberals, progressives, people in blue cities, blue states, women, children, marginalized groups, minorities, the disabled, the media. None of us share in this country, according to MAGA, when in fact, this country belongs to us just as much as it does to them. But yes, it is a cult. And the very fact that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Republican Speaker Mike Johnson feel so comfortable to behave this way while cameras are on and microphones are in their face, it's really weird stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments.